Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We have some super important stuff to talk about. This is safety first. And when we say safety first, we're referring to vehicles that are transporting cargo material on the road, transportation carriers. This guy has made it his life's work to make sure those vehicles are safe, and he helps motor carrier companies do that with DOT training solutions. His background, amazing as a safety investigator for the government, trained law enforcement, motor carriers, on and on and on. Today, we're going to talk about how to get a motor carrier ready for a DOT inspection. Safety First with Matt Freeman. He's with us. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Hey, doing well. How you doing, Steve?
Fantastic. Fantastic. I'm intrigued about all of this. You just get in your car and drive down the street and you see the trucks going by. There's a lot that should go into the preparation of those vehicles to make sure they're safe. God forbid something happens because safety protocols weren't followed. And of course, it just comes down to the government to make sure that that happens. But it starts with you to make sure that these companies take care of that. So where do we begin today?
Yeah, just real quick, I'm going to segue right into what you said here real quick. Back in the day, whenever I'd get done with the class for whatever training we had to do, I'd always pick a road trip weekend, grab the guys, and we all go do something. And they always say, Matt, we don't want to hear about any safety talk because I'm pinpointing everything you see wrong with the truck going down the road. So, but you're right about learning this stuff. You start noticing things on vehicles and different stuff that for safety facts that's like, you're going,
But you know what? It's funny. I totally get that because I always say you don't want to be in the car with me because I'm a music and radio guy. I'm changing the music every 14.2 seconds. Like, so to your point, we don't want to be in the vehicle with you because your point, hey, look at that truck that just went by. Yeah, they don't have the right mud flaps, whatever it might be. So that's our life work. But you know what? What you do is super important. And that's why you're fantastic at what you do, because your radar is always up about that stuff.
It sure is, and thank you. So hey, let's talk about what goes into a DOT audit, or let me back that up. What do you need to be prepared for when the DOT, state or federal, shows up at your doorstep, and what compliance are they going to be looking at in safety side? So there's a category. Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas that they're going to look at. Okay. And first off, I'll start off, why are they going to show up? Okay, what's going to cause the investigators to show up first? Okay, so there's a few things here. With all the systems in place that the DOT has set, they have the safety management system that we talked about a little bit when we talked about the regulations and how they take effect. So if you have high rating scores in there, okay, depending if they're out of service or multiple defects that are being discovered, okay, that's going to cause them, and when that starts flagging, what they call basics, okay, all the different categories I'm getting ready to describe here to you, that's going to cause them to show up. The other reason, if there's accidents, okay, they're going to show up. If there are complaints, they have to go in and see if the complaint is founded or unfounded. The other companies that always, no matter what, every 3 years, okay, are hazmat companies, transportation companies, and passenger vehicles. Okay, companies who have the motor coaches and things like that. They get visited every 3 years because they don't get stopped on an everyday basis because they have passengers on them. So they go internally and do investigations. There's a lot of protocol that comes to stopping a bus when you have your full passengers. So that's why they try to do the internal side at the facility. Those are the 5 categories of when the DOT will show up. Those are the reasonings. You usually they don't really just randomly show up and knock on your door and say, hey, I'm here to help you. That's not how that works, and there's some other reasons that they might show up, but those are the main 5 there. So when they come in, they're going to look at, you want to make sure that you have, and what we help you with, that your driver qualification files are intact. Okay, that's a key there. Your drug and alcohol, if you have CDL drivers, they're going to look at your drug and alcohol records. Your vehicle maintenance, Okay, you got to have vehicle maintenance files, and there's some standards set to those that we'll talk about. And then hours of service. We broke into hours of service a little early last week, and talked about that. So those are the categories there that they're going to look at, that as a motor carrier, small, medium, or large, that these are things that you have to have in place for the
Mhm.
DOT to come in and review.
So when you say that there are routine inspections, obviously with the passenger connected vehicles like a bus, coach bus, whatever it might be, that has to automatically happen because those random inspections don't take place. Those inspections with somebody carrying cargo, how often does that happen? I mean, I do see, where I am, we have an expressway. Sometimes you see checkpoints. Maybe it's a regular checkpoint or just a random where they're flagging trucks off the road, for weight or whatever it might be. But how often does that really happen?
It happens every day,
Wow.
every day. Between, and what causes some of these, is that by the roadside inspection, that's what causes a lot of the investigations that go on. Because every time a vehicle is stopped, it goes into let me rephrase it, it goes onto the file, okay, of that company. So every time you get a violation, it shows in that portal of that company. They go by what they call the USDOT number. It's every
Uh,
motor carrier has a USDOT number.
yeah.
So that's how they fall underneath the regulations. Okay, we probably failed to mention that before. So every motor carrier has a USDOT number. Every USDOT number, which is a motor carrier, is required to meet these categories of compliance that we talked about. Okay, yeah, this is exactly what the DOT is looking for. Um,
Hmm.
so because of those roadside stops, when you go in, what's part of a roadside? Like you said, these inspections, you got a driver, you got a vehicle. Okay. If there's issues with the driver, obviously the focus point is going to be on the driver qualifications, which is one of the key things, one of the first things that an investigator will look at when they go in. So it's like a couple things here to be a little bit more specific. So if I'm going to come in and look at a driver qualification file without going on like as an actual investigator, what that motor carrier needs to keep in that file, okay? You don't have to have the whole company file there. This is not an HR, human resources file. This
Right.
is a driver qualification file, okay? The government doesn't care about certain things, so they want you to have what's asked for. So what, just for example, for a driver qualification file, you have to have an application for employment, okay? If you don't, there's a violation, okay? You have to have the initial motor vehicle record, okay? So it doesn't matter if that that driver has been there 10 years, you still have to have the initial one that you did, okay? And then you got to run one annually after that, all right? Which has always been a funny thing for me. I have to have a road test or a copy of the CDL, okay,
Hmm.
which is equivalent to a road test in that file, all right? If you have a CDL driver, you just want to go ahead and have a copy of your CDL in there, because right now with the CDLs, they have everything on them now, okay? You have to do an annual inquiry every year on that MVR, okay, a minimum of every 12 months, because they want to make sure that you still got a good driving record. If you're only running it once a year, what if you have some infractions there? Okay, because that's what they're going to be looking at. Again, the MVR, make sure the MVR is showing their medical certificate. If you're an interstate carrier, you got to make sure you have a medical card. Okay, so that's part of it. Regardless if you are a CDL or non-CDL, if you're interstate, you got to have a medical card. Okay.
Can I just jump in at that
Yeah,
one at that point?
yeah.
The medical card. What
Mhm.
what type of information is on that? What does that tell?
Yeah. So the medical card is what they call, you have to have a DOT physical. Okay, which you have to go to a physician on the registry that can do just a physical on you, basically saying, hey, you meet all the qualification that DOT requires for you to be a driver.
Hmm.
Okay,
Okay.
there's no hidden information there. It's just a basic, uh, some of these, get into the HIPAA, but the DOT can override the HIPAA regulations for a medical card only, because a medical card just says, hey, you meet the requirements, because I'm not a physician, if I was the investigator. So you have to go by, hey, if that doctor said he was good, you gotta take it. Okay.
Is
So
that any physician, or is that one that specializes in, call it DOT or CDL physicals?
sure. So they have to be on what they call the National Register. Okay, to show that
Okay.
they meet that. All right. So on that MVR, you'll have the registry number from that doctor. Okay, or
Gotcha.
that physician's office. So in sense, yes. Okay. Um,
What would I find this interesting in terms of that they go that this deep. What would prevent a driver from driving? Where's the, pass and fail
yeah, no.
mark there?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be very careful on how I say this one. But there are disqualifications. Okay, maybe the driver's diabetic. Okay, or the driver is high blood pressure. Okay, certain medications could prevent him from driving or
Okay.
getting a CDL. Okay, certain infractions on his license, kind of skipping back, could prevent him from being a CDL driver. But on the medical side, it's all going to depend on that driver making the decision on the health that they're in. Eyes, okay. Uh, to go with that, they have what they call a skills performance waiver or medical exemption. Okay, so if you're missing a limb, okay, Sam, I don't have I'm missing an arm, right? They have to pass a test. That's all part of the. So you have a medical card, and you would have a skills performance. A guy is let's say he wears an eye patch because he only has one eye. He may have to have a skills performance. Or these days, you have a lot of veterans and different folks who come from different parts of jobs where things have happened where they have a missing limb of some sort. Again,
Sure.
legs, whatever it is, but they have to go through these evaluations to be proven to be a
Cool.
driver.
Wow, interesting. I didn't know that it went that deep. All right, so fantastic. All right, continue. What else are we looking at here?
Yeah, sure. All right, so trying to figure out where I left off here. So the other one, just real short on this one, is drug and alcohol. Okay, if you guys are CDL drivers, the company is required to have um to be in a drug and alcohol pool. Okay, so they have to do random testing on these drivers throughout the year. That's something that the DOT is going to come in and look at, make sure they're following the requirements. Okay.
Gotcha.
Uh, vehicle maintenance. Vehicle maintenance. This is where I'm the most passionate about. There are certain requirements that go with that. So the DOT is going to come in. They're going to look at. They want to know: are you doing your annual inspections? Okay. Are these vehicles getting annually done? And you're required to keep that paperwork for 12 months. I'm sorry, every 12 months, at the minimum of every 2 months, you have to have an annual inspection. For record retention, what I used to look at is how long are you keeping it for that record retention? They have to keep that record for 14 months. Okay. So even though that they only go back 12 months and it has to be done every 12 months, you still have to keep it for 14 months. Okay. So when the DOT comes in, they're going to be saying, they're going to look, okay, you've done your annual. Next thing you're going to say, oh, did you keep it for 2 more months? Okay. So they only go back 1 year. So depending on the sampling and when that inspection was done, they may or may not have that actual inspection. Okay.
Hmm.
So that's things they're going to look at there on the maintenance side. The other thing they're going to look at is your daily vehicle inspection reports. Are they doing them? Okay. If they're doing those as required, they're pre and post trip inspections, okay, which they call a daily vehicle inspection report, DVIR. They got to keep those for 90 days. Okay. After 90 days, they can move them out of their files. But the DOT is going to come in and look and see all those that you kept for 90 days. Okay. That's a big one. Another thing that they're going to look at is if you let a vehicle go. So you sold a vehicle. Say I'm a motor carrier and I sold my truck and trailer to you, Steve. So I'm required as a motor carrier to keep those records for 1 year and 6 months after I release that vehicle.
Hmm.
So they're not, so everybody's like, well, why do I care what happens to the vehicle afterwards? Well, no, there's a reason for that. So there's issues that happen, just per se as an example, if there's issues that happen with that vehicle, they can always go back to the motor carrier and look at those records to see, if it's being maintained, and it's always worst case scenario when we come to that. Okay.
Why are they retained by the seller? Yeah, because I find that interesting as well. You know, the responsibility is off on I sell a car, it's yours, you signed it, you know, as is,
Right.
here you go. Why is that kept?
It's part of the regulations. It's been that way for a
Oh,
long time. I honestly don't have a direct answer for you.
hmm,
But the only time I've ever had to do it from my experience is when there's been issues with that vehicle with another carrier. And we've gone back and looked at those records for it could be an incident happening, and usually it's over an incident or um, repetitive issues.
gotcha. Uh, question I have for you. With the inspections that happen, whether they're random or planned, and this is a ballpark,
Mhm.
in your estimation, how often, percentage wise, how often do you think vehicles are flagged with issues?
All the time.
Would you,
A lot.
wow,
The
okay, would
percentage
you
is
say,
high. The percentage is very high. Um,
hmm,
you know, so why maintenance is such a passion of mine is because of what you just asked. Um, doing their drivers doing their daily vehicle inspections on them. If they're doing these good, okay, like they're supposed to be, and the maintenance department is taking care of these vehicles, when they go to roadside, they're looking at safer vehicles. Okay. And because they're randomly pulled into the scales, okay, or roadside, depending whatever functions going on, they may be doing a whole task force of pulling over X amount of vehicles on the roadway. It's all about safety and making sure these vehicles are being saved. Um, the the key thing though with that though, I talk about record retention still and on the maintenance side of it.
hmm,
So every inspection, okay, that the roadside gives, the motor carrier is required to keep that inspection form for 1 year for 12 months. So when the DOT comes in, they're gonna they already see it, they already see in the portal of what that driver's in because they looked up the DOT number. They know how many times he's been pulled over.
hmm,
So for the previous 12 months, they're going to go back and say, how many inspections did you have? And that's where that motor carrier is required to show, hey, I have all copies right here in this folder. Okay. Um, little
wow.
things. Um, and it's all about that they're paying attention to maintaining the vehicles.
So with those inspections and you know, you identified that the number is pretty high where
Mhm.
there are violations there. Two questions on that. How often does a motor carrier company have to pay a fine? And is it a direct reflection on the driver? Let's say, you know, he's got a clean record, but there's issues with the vehicle. What responsibility falls on the driver?
So all violations reflect back to the company. It's their equipment, their driver.
Okay.
Okay. So the infractions
So
are
he
missing.
doesn't, I don't mean to, you know, cut you off
Oh
here,
no,
but just, you know,
good.
for clarity, it's like, whoa. Um, let's say he's got some violations,
Mhm.
uh, and there's some with the truck, whatever it might be, or the vehicle. Is he on the hook for anything, even though he's got violations? Is he on the hook for driving, or it all goes back to the motor carrier company for allowing him to drive their vehicle?
No, it's kind of both on a little bit. Okay. So when it goes back to the driver, when it goes back to the carrier, okay, all those violations show up into the SMS safety management system. Okay. And so they have what they call there's red flags. You have a red flag driver. For say the
Oh,
driver just keeps getting hours of service, and we haven't talked about hours of service, we're going to in a second, keeps getting hours of service violations. Okay. Or he can't he keeps driving without a medical card. Okay, he's supposed to have a medical card. Okay. Um, or he's been suspended and continues to drive with suspension. Now, there's different rules and regulations that go with each of these. So, so yes. Now here's where, and I've did this multiple times throughout the year, that a driver can be held responsible. Okay.
hmm,
So there are cases that can be which are penalties that would go against a driver if they can't get their act together. Okay, so if they become a red flag driver and they're having multiple, the guy just, for whatever reason, okay, they can, and I have in my past, taken out cases and penalties against drivers. Okay, they're not always as hefty as you would be on a motor carrier, but drivers, any penalty on a driver is hefty, regardless of what it is. So to circle back, yes, they can be held responsible for their actions if they don't fix them.
What is the in your memory, if you can even go back to all of everything that you've experienced, what's the largest fine a motor carrier company had to pay? And
And
I'm not talking about just, well, you know what, actually, we can go there too. Um, yeah, let's say a judgment. So in a lawsuit, that's one area, but just a straight out, we pulled you over. Man, you got a lot going on there. You're on the hook for this.
yeah, I believe the largest one, and I'm talking off the cuff here, I know it was in
Sure.
the millions. Okay. I don't want to say a specific number, but I don't have a case study in front of me. Me personally, the largest penalties I've given are been in the six digits.
Wow. And what are some, and again, I know this is hard, just throwing stuff at you,
Oh, you're
but
fine.
that being said, what were some of the, okay, so in the six digits, what were some of the violations that warranted, that big number?
Sure. Your critical and acute violations. Okay, those are your serious ones. Those are the ones that start uh adding up. Okay. You have your non-critical and acute violations. That's a violation.
What's a critical violation?
Critical violation, false log.
False log?
Yeah, falsification.
And it's when we spoke last, I brought that up, because we talked, it's a logbook. So who's, all right, let me just write whatever in there. But somehow it's got to be backed up some way and it could be exposed. Oh, wow, interesting.
Yeah. Well, you have critical and acute violations, and your acute, your worse. Um, your critical, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head here. Some of your critical violations would be like out of service violations.
Okay.
It,
Wow.
it just really kind of depends. There's basically everything in, let's see, let me find one here. I don't have my regulation books with me, but in the regulations, a penalty could be assessed for any violation. Okay. It just, it all kind of depends on how that review goes, an investigation, so what the findings are.
Wow. We're almost out of time. This is like crazy.
We can have a whole topic just on this, Steve.
It's an eye opener and a wake up for companies that do transportation and motor carrying.
Yeah.
Matt, how do we connect with you? If you're one of those companies, you're concerned about your DOT situation, you offer training solutions to make sure these fines are, look at the investment a company would make versus what would happen to them. And again, we go back to, gosh forbid, a lawsuit, loss of life, all of that. Um, it just can't happen. You got to take the steps. How do we connect with you and start that process?
Yeah, absolutely. You can connect with me at matt@dottrainingsolutions.com. You can find us on our website at dottrainingsolutions.com and give us a call. Give me a call, my direct line, 573-416-8203. And real quick here, the last thing I have to say here is hours of service is another one we didn't talk about that, but they will look at your hours of service, as part of that when they come in, that's part of those categories. And training will help make a difference on your staff, your safety staff, your drivers. And is very well looked at when a DOT comes in to see that
Hmm.
you actually making the difference by hiring someone to come in and help you improve. It
Yeah.
always makes a difference.
And that's huge. And even the mindset of your employees where, guys or girls, we're
Yeah,
taking this serious. We're taking this serious. And the mindset changes, I believe, for the motor carrier company when somebody like you comes in and kind of picks through things and makes sure that everything is done the right way.
absolutely.
Wow. Matt, always great talking with you. Thanks for being here. And amazing is what's going on out there. That, even if you're not a motor carrier company, I find it fascinating and look forward next time we get together.
All right. Look forward to it. See you next time.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.